All right, so for today, we're going to look at some evolution of love in terms of what words are used in the Bible. The Bible, actually, as we know it, has a history of translation, and some of the terms that we think are love actually have Greek roots and are written in Greek. So we'll be covering the four loves in Greek for today. And the first love is storge, and that means affection. It can be used for family affection, the way a parent might feel for a child, or affection between brothers or sisters. And it has to do with a real familiarity. It can even be said to those who are like family, perhaps friends or people who have become so close that you feel that you know them very well. The second one is philia, which is friendship. And this has also to do with a familiarity, and it can be more of a mental sort of likeness, perhaps. You have similar interests with somebody, you feel they support you, and you feel that they are a loving friend. So this would be, again, another example of a non-romantic sense of love, and it is also used in the Bible as one way in which Christians should love. The next one is perhaps more commonly thought of as love. We think of eros as romance, and of course there are Greek gods and goddesses of love. We think of Valentine's Day perhaps in popular culture, and the Cupid, for example. We think of Aphrodite as the goddess of love, and also Eros as the embodiment of love. And so this actually has to do with the sense of romantic love, of physical love. There can be a deep emotional hook involved where you fall immediately in love. And actually, this idea of eros was linked with an illness. So you may have had this in your life where you don't feel like eating, you've fallen in love, perhaps you can't sleep. And so this was diagnosed as one of the symptoms of eros. Eros can be godlike because it is so powerful, but in terms of Abrahamic religions, there's a warning against thinking that this great passionate love would be anything like the love for a creator or for God, for example. So it's a very powerful love that you'll find in a lot of the songs that you'll be writing about. And we'll come back to this more with the actual assignment. The fourth love is perhaps the ideal love in Christianity, and it's agape. It is unconditional love. So C.S. Lewis, for example, in his book on the four loves, really talks about agape in terms of Christ giving his life for the salvation of others. It is an unconditional love, giving of yourself regardless of consequences for the cause of love. It is a love where it doesn't have to be returned. One is happy to merely give. So it is, again, is the Christian ideal for the way that people are to relate to each other. So having been saved, having accepted Christ as their Savior, for example, then one can take that love and also give it unconditionally to others in terms of a Christian community. So, these loves have earlier histories, of course, and we think about the four humors and the elements of the body. There are Greek roots here. Hippocrates is one of the earliest writers of medicine, and we have him from 460 to 370 BC. And if you think of the staff that medical doctors still use, it relates back to that Greek time and for symbols of medicine of the time. We also have then the evolution as the Greek city-states become weaker, and as colonization moves forward in history, we have the rise of Romans. And we have Galen, for example, from 129 AD to 200 AD, who also took the ideas of Hippocrates and these four humors and develops them. Finally, in medieval Europe, from 500 AD to 1500 AD, we have the adoption of these four humors across much of Europe. So we recall that the Romans formed a Roman Catholic Church and spread Catholicism across Europe during medieval times. So we have also a link to the body, and these four humors are blood, yellow bile, phlegm, and black bile. Each of these is linked with its element, with a moisture or heat or being cold or dry. We can translate them into other terms that were used. So blood is linked with sanguine, yellow bile with choleric, phlegm with phlegmatic, and black bile with melancholic. So we tend not to use sanguine, choleric, and phlegmatic so much. We do still use melancholy and melancholic to this day. So the roots for our own sense of sadness have roots going back through the Roman and Greek empires. And for our purposes, we want to focus on blood because that is the air element, it is hot and moist, it is sanguine, and it represents amorous, happy, and generous. And the idea, of course, is to have in this system a balance of all the biles. If you have too much sanguine humor, then you can find yourself sick. Same goes for the other humors. So every person is different. Every person might have a prevalence of one humor or the other. But in general, you are to have all four, and they are supposed to work together. So if we fast forward towards contemporary times, we have a different system of medicine. We are no longer using the four humors. We are looking at chemicals, at physiology, the chemistry of the body. So we have lots of chemicals that are active in our body. And so, for example, in terms of attraction, we might look at dopamine. So dopamine is thought to be the pleasure chemical, producing a feeling of bliss. So when this chemical releases, when one feels they're in love, it actually produces a chemical change in the brain, which also impacts the body. Now, lots of situations can increase dopamine. So, for example, the use of some drugs can increase dopamine to create pleasure. This is what leads to addiction. So there's even a song, Addicted to Love. You can become addicted to love chemically. You can in the same way that you can become addicted, or a similar way that you can become addicted to a medication or to a drug. Another example of a chemistry that's important would be the oxytocin in our brain. So oxytocin is a chemical that leads to trust and empathy of in-groups. It's found to spike in terms of lactation, childbirth, and orgasm. And as we've discussed this in other classes, if sexual intercourse leads to orgasm and people are startled by the effects of that, oxytocin would keep them together. It would create a greater bond, and it would further cement the relationship, ideally. So although there are many different kinds of chemicals that can lead to attachment, there are a few that we were highlighting today. In terms of lust, we have the testosterone and estrogen that are causing chemical changes, especially speeded up after puberty, right? When this helps the bodies to change and are prevalent in both male and female bodies, but in different measure for each, of course. Men having greater testosterone and women's chemicals being more based upon estrogen. We have all of these chemicals in our body, and they're interacting, or when we fall in love, we'll see that these chemicals are in fact active. But of course, as a religion class, there's more to this than simple chemicals. But it's important to know that there are various aspects of falling in love, and chemistry certainly is a part of that you will want to consider. Ever feel like there are two of you inside you? Well, according to physiologists, there are in some ways, at least two, if not more, parts of the brain that significantly change the way that we interact with other people. So for example, we have a left brain and a right brain. As you can see from the visual, the right brain has more to do with creativity, with artistic expression, with emotion, colors, music, and so forth. And you'll be drawing upon this part of your brain. The left side of the brain is more logical, it is more numerical, it is more black and white, and these two parts are integrated. Strangely enough, there's sort of a mirroring that occurs. The right brain actually tends to control more activity on the left side of the body, whereas the left side of the brain tends to control more of the right side of the body. This is why left-handed people are said to be more creative or better artists, and sometimes it is true, in part because their right side of the brain is more active. Most people, however, are left brain, right hand dominant, and we'll be using both of these parts of our brain, of course, to think about music and its messages of love. So I'd like you to do an exercise. Go ahead and take out a piece of paper and try writing your name with your left hand. And then after you do so, write your name with your right hand. And as you do this, you'll see that left and right sides of your bodies really are different. And for our last exercise, I ask you to draw a picture, just a sketch, with your left hand, and think of a place where you felt happy. Maybe it's a childhood place, a place that you visit today, and give us some details about what that place is. All right, thank you much.